Speaking of reliability, a podcast with good friends talking with you about reliability engineering topics. Welcome to Speaking of Reliability. This is Fred Schenkelberg.
And this is Dianna Dini.
Hey, Dianna. You mentioned, as we were just chatting here, something that sparked a memory or a process I've been trying to work through and deal with. As you mentioned, there was something like 37 tools for Lean Six Sigma.
I have that noted down from somewhere. I don't know where the source of that is. So if there is a lean practitioner expert.
Yeah. What are all these 37 ones? Oh, I remember one of them. It was on a LinkedIn post. I think that's where we saw it. And it was kind of just a listing of it. And I don't know why somebody felt compelled to list all the different tools. Except,
I've seen stuff like that too. Yeah.
Yeah. 57 different ways to do a hypothesis test. Okay. There probably is. Okay. But
that sounds like a nightmare.
Well, one of the fattest books I got in my bookcase is basically all the different ways to do statistical comparisons. So a lot of it is non-parametric stuff. Is this random or not random? Is this normal? Is not normal? Is it the same as or different than this other thing? And comparing Likert scale results. There's algorithms for that. There's all kinds of, and then it has all the hypothesis tests, and I haven't counted them. Yet it brings up one of the things that Carl and I struggled with the book is that we were sitting there going, well, how do you figure out what to do to recommend in a plan? Like we think we need to do an accelerated life test. Yet the span of ways to approach that range from just to use the engineering judgment and make a guess to, look at past data, to run a simple experiments against your previous iteration to see if it's as good as or better, run it against a model, run a full-blown characterization where you fit a new formula to it, or do a physics of failure model study that takes, 5 PhD candidates 2 years to do. There's a lot of options, and some weed themselves out for all kinds of reasons. Yet it was what Carl and I realized is that we're familiar with a lot of this stuff. We're not experts at every one of them, but we know they exist. And the idea that there's 37 tools for Lean Six Sigma, and there are a lot of tools or techniques out there. But when I first learned hypothesis testing, it was to compare two means. I had two sets of data, and I, calculate the mean and the variance for both of them, and then you could go into this formula and say, yep, they are different or they're not different for whichever direction you want to go. And then somebody said, well, you can do this for variances too. And I pulled up the same formula. I says, how do I use this for variances? What's the variance of a variance? And they said, no, it's a different formula. You got to do the F distribution. I was like, oh, okay. And,
this sounds very familiar. Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you so far.
So the hard part about what we're doing, and I think it's not limited to what we do in reliability and quality engineering, is there are a lot of stuff out there. Think of a mechanical engineer and all the types of materials and all the ways to connect materials from one to another and all the issues that come with it one way or the other. I think there's more than 37 combinations of stuff they got to be, and it's the awareness problem. And so that was my thought, is that when I heard that note, there's so many tools, and Carl and I know we struggled with it, and it was like, well, how do we improve the awareness of the range of tools that are available? And that was an issue I had. But so what would you mean that this sounds familiar? It sounds like a personal story here coming.
Well, just remembering how I learned statistics. And, you have it in school and you're in the course, you're like, yeah, okay. And you plug and chug and that's fine. But, when you get out in the real world and you're looking at a real project, for a product that somebody is going to be really using, it's a completely different ballgame.
Yeah, the answer is not in the back of the book.
Yeah, the answer is not in the back of the book. And you're kind of trying to remember what you learned in college and how it applies and stuff like that. I don't know. Maybe that was my college. But yeah, so you crack it open again, and then you do learn that stepwise stuff, like, oh, I can use it to do this. And then once you've learned that, then like you mentioned, variance, you can do hypothesis tests for variance. Oh, okay. And then that goes into other things like design of experiments and stuff like that. So there is that awareness, and you kind of learn it as you need it, and you're exposed to it by somebody else. You're like, oh, I could use that for that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And you mentioned a lot of the reliability tools, and this prompted the 37 tools of Lean.
Mm-hmm.
In the quality world, there's also a book that I reference sometimes. It's called the Quality Toolbox,
mm-hmm.
and there's case studies, there's tools alphabetically, and then there's a matrix in the front that say, if you're doing this kind of thing, then here's this, or this tool's good for when you're doing this kind of thing. And it was a useful resource, and I do recommend it, but just to pick it up and try to learn to do something with that would be hard. Having and not really having the ability to try it out with people or to see other people do it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And that is hard.
Well, I suppose there's a couple different ways. One is just being curious, right? It's pick up the book and, oh, what is an affinity diagram? You might never use
mm-hmm.
it, yet if you run across the circumstance when that's the right tool to use, you go, hopefully being aware of something allows you to go, I don't remember the name of it, but it was a way of creating links between different parts of a system, what's driving the other one, what's important to it, what's influenced by it, stuff like that. And then somebody might remember, or you can find it, and then you have the right tool. If you have no knowledge whatsoever of a tool like that ever existing, either you invent it and think that's brilliant, I need to write a book.
That's happened with other things with me. Oh, that's a great idea. Somebody's already done it.
That's right.
Yeah.
Hey, there's this thing. How come everything always falls like towards the center of this large mass around? What, we should call that something.
It seems really normal.
Yeah. Or, it's, I think I don't know, I know it's a Newton quote, isn't it? Is the only reason I've come so far is standing on the shoulders of giants kind of thing.
I think so. I've always liked that quote.
Yeah. The issue is that it's being aware of other people's work and what they're working on and marveling at it or admiring it, or, for me, the issue is just being aware. And for years and years and years, I subscribed to Scientific American, and there's all this wizards, material science and physics type stuff they talk about, medical systems and biology and all these other cool stuff. And every now and then there would be this flicker of a problem. I'm trying to solve some problem in a factory or with a client, and I go, if we use this tool over here, it may help us see this in a different light, a different way. Because I've never owned a scanning electron microscope. It wasn't a kit my dad got at me for my 10th birthday or anything.
Yeah.
But I was aware of what it could do. And so I was able to recommend it. And then we said, well, yeah, that would work. And so we found a lab that had it and went and used it. But the idea is that part of it is just being curious. What is out there? So opening that toolkit book and paging through it and going, well, what is this? What is that? And you don't have to work your way through it and do experiments or, be a master at every tool that's in there. I think there's too many tools to be a master at all of them. Yet I think the broad awareness so that you can get up to speed to solve a particular problem with just the right tool is important.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And there's, especially with quality tools. Now I'm not talking about statistics. here when I say this.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a lot of quality tools that are team based, prioritization based kind of things where, yes, it's a tool and a lot of people have used it. And over the years, it's been refined or there's some best practices with it. But that doesn't mean that you can't just try it on your own. Like you said, you don't have to be an expert at everything. But if you know about it, go ahead and try it and see if it works for you.
Mm-hmm.
And don't be afraid of making a mistake in how you use it. But just be aware of that how you use it will affect, the results that you're looking at. So if you use a tool in one particular way and you get this result, just, I guess take a look at the whole journey that you took with the tool to get to your conclusion and make sure that it makes sense.
Yeah.
But don't be afraid to try it.
Wow, I keep thinking of statistics things, but I'm thinking of, it's called, isn't there like the 7 basic quality tools or 7 fun? I think they come up with different names for every author, but they're brainstorming, for example, and flowcharts and fishbone diagram. And I think there were a handful of others that were in there. There were 7 actually. And then somebody came out with a paper, the next 7 tools, and it was design of experiments and control charts and, more fancy type stuff. The team-based ones is interesting. You can do brainstorm all by yourself. It's just not as much lightning, as one way to phrase it. You can come up with lots of ideas, and there's what's the mind mapping. I love doing that.
I do too.
And I've never found a program that's fast enough. So it's just a big piece of paper and just go.
And colorful markers and pens, and it's fun.
I can use just the regular old pencil. I'm old fashioned that way. It's too slow because if I have to pick up something else, then it's like reminds me of a professor in college that was teaching mechanics, and he had 3 colors of chalk in his hand, and he was proud that he could pick out the color of chalk for the vectors, which was blue, without looking, because apparently he could tell the texture between red, yellow, or red, blue, and white chalk. And if that's your claim to fame, dude, okay.
That sounds like a mastery of a tool.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But he was very good at all the vectors were always blue, and all the acceleration, the second order stuff was red, and so on. Scalars were white. And
so it's like he had calibrated fingertips. He should have worked in quality.
Well, no, I don't think you'd want him there either. There's more to that story, but he had no idea what he was writing on the board. Somebody gave him the script basically to show this derivation, but I don't think he could do it on his own. But that's a different story. Which is one part. If where I live here in the Silicon Valley, for years you hear about it as, fake it till you make it kind of thing. Well, that doesn't work if you're actually trying to solve a problem. People go to jail for pretending their blood sampling program or software package actually works.
Yes.
You can't
Absolutely
fake that.
True.
And
right.
So the back to the idea though, there are a lot of tools. And so Carl and I tried to list the ones, at least reliability related, that we could think of, and I lost count of how many in there. It's an appendix for the book. It is a long list, and we just put like 2 sentences for each one, knowing that most tools are available through Wikipedia or various textbooks and all kinds of different places. Sounds like that toolkit book, which I think I have. Is this the pocket one? The pocket size book?
No, it's a pretty big book. It's like textbook size.
Okay. I'll have to track that one down. But the idea is there's plenty of things out there about how to use something. Here's the steps to do a control chart, or here's how do you do this process, or here's, courses and all kinds of good stuff on it. The part I found a problem with is that when individuals are faced with, I got to go work and solve this problem, they're very naturally, and I'm guilty of it too, is very naturally grab the tool they're most familiar with. And so if I'm really, really good at design of experiments or HALT, I might default to using those tools, both of which can help you uncover defects in a product. Yet they're very different approaches. So which one's right? and so the dilemma that Carl and I came up with was that, there's a lot of tools, and first you got to be aware of them and fight the bias to always use your favorite, which is hard to do because you know so much about that tool. You know how to apply it or adapt it to whatever that circumstance is. But then how do you choose which is the right tool? And it goes back to what you mentioned, Dianna, is get back with that team, get back with your stakeholders and say, all right, here's 3 options here, and here's pros and cons on each of these things. Let's decide what approach we're going to use with all these trade-offs of what we're trying to achieve. It might be a way to go about doing that. Pull out that tool about facilitation, which amazingly is not listed as a tool for engineers.
Yeah, it should be though.
Yeah.
I've talked with a lot of statistical engineers too, that they're usually brought in at the end of something, right? Well, here we have this data. Can you help us figure it out? Well, instead, they like to be part of the design of the experiment or the test, or design or plan for the end in mind, which I think kind of goes along with what you're saying. I guess it's a tangent though, but you just want to get your stakeholders involved, and you may be thinking to study a problem in a certain way and get these results, but someone with a different background, like statistical engineering, may have a different way to collect the data or to look at the problem. And those are good things to talk about instead of just jumping on the first tool that you think about. Just taking a moment and really defining the problem and what you want to learn, right?
Yep. The other part is that you might be ready to do this full characterization for 6 months, and this key stakeholder that is commissioning this project or wants the answers is going, wait a sec, no, I need the answer next week. Next Tuesday, 8:00, I need answers.
Or I don't need to know all that. I just need to know this.
Exactly. Yeah. I don't need a full characterization. I just need to know, is vendor A better than vendor B on this characteristic? Do a simple hypothesis test. As much as you love doing all this other stuff. Yeah, I'm guilty of that. I'll do it with no other instruction, and then I learned the hard way that you need to ask, what exactly are you looking for? Yeah. And sometimes it doesn't matter what tool you pick. It's and I had this happen, I was doing an experiment, and I come and showed it to my boss, and he goes, well, that's not what I expected. Keep running samples until you get my answer. To this day, I believe he was being facetious, but I'm not sure.
Because you didn't ask.
No, like, all right.
So what happened with the information?
Well, the more data just proved that he was wrong as all get out with his desired outcome, and like, and so we moved on.
I can see that happening too. That's funny.
Yeah. No, and so back to the awareness part and one last note on this, and we'll probably have to come back to this topic in a couple other ways, is that, being aware of stuff and reading books or scanning through stuff and look, because it caught my eye. What are the 37 ways you can, or tools are part of Lean Six Sigma? And a couple of the names, I had no idea what that was. I looked them up. And so I increased my awareness slightly, but that's on yourself. You got to be curious and aware that you need to be aware of all this stuff. The other one is run into that mentor or the experienced folks and bounce ideas and suggestions off of them. So, is brainstorm the right way to approach this part of the problem? And somebody else may say, no, we need to narrow down our options. We got too many, and let's use some prioritization type tool. Or like in statistics, it's that person that's, the 2 weeks ahead of you in their coursework or something in the experience. And they say, wait a second, there's a way to use hypothesis tests for variance, but that's on page 18. You're only on page 6.
6 and 18.
It's not any statistics books I've ever seen. But you know what I mean? It's like, the next chapter's on that. Okay. And it's like, wait a sec. There's a whole world of regression analysis. is amazing. There's all this stuff. But anyway, there are a lot of tools. There's no doubt about it. There's lots of ways to go about picking them. And it's the gist, I think, of this topic is really be aware of what's out there so that you don't miss the exact right tool to quickly solve a problem for you or to create the information you're looking for. Because you can spend a lot of time trying to reinvent something that is already well documented and out there. You just need to know it's there.
Yeah, that's right. And like, sometimes you see on those, I don't know, on social media, it's the life hacks kind of things where they're like, hey, create a new tool. Well, they take a wrench and then they cut it off and then they put resin on the inside and they do something else when, that's kind of cool, but they already have that.
Yeah.
The hardware store, for like 50 cents. You don't have to go through cutting off a $15 wrench to get it. So,
right, yeah.
So yeah, there might be something already available that you can use. And I think you're right. Awareness is key.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of resources now. Like you said, Wikipedia and there's ReliaWiki. Is that still being maintained?
I don't know if it's maintained. It's still out there. Sendo's got a lot of different voices and ways of approaching different tools. Yeah,
that's right. Out there. Sendo reliability. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that was number 3 on your list. I'm taking a note here, Dianna.
Sorry. Well, I can plug my own site too, Quality During Design. It has some quality tools.
Yeah, and your articles, blogs, and podcasts, they really go into some depth and the nuances of when and why you use stuff. I enjoy that. So that's all good. So anyway, if you're listening to this, one is hopefully Sendo's higher on the list, but Quality by Design is actually a really good resource too. So get over there. But where do you go? How do you stay aware of what's going on? What are the new tools and techniques and lab equipment? And, where do you go do this stuff? Or do you find yourself picking your favorite tool and looking for some comments or advice or questions around this topic? Let us know. Head over to accendoreliability.com/go/SOR. And you can find us a couple of ways to get in touch with us there. Dianna and I and the other hosts of the show are available through LinkedIn and through our About pages. So like I always say, there's lots of ways for you to get in touch. And we do get a good number of questions, so I'm enjoying that. As we're recording this in a few minutes, which won't help you to attend it, it'll hopefully be recorded, is I'm doing a webinar based on all the questions I've gotten over the last couple of months on the topic of accelerated life testing. It's a class of tools that apparently a good number of people over the last couple of months have got questions on. So I'm going to go over a bunch of those questions in kind of a focused way and then ask if there's more questions. And, Dianna, I'm really quite concerned that I'll probably end up with like 3 more webinars worth of questions to cover, which would be cool. We'll probably do it some in podcast form too.
That probably would be cool. Now if somebody didn't get to go to the webinar, they would, how would they access the recording? Yeah,
at accendoreliability.com, and there's a tab that's labeled, I think it's labeled webinars. I'd have to look. I think the drop-down goes to live webinars or live events, but the top one is where all the recordings are. And there's also a Sendo Reliability webinar series under a podcast. And so you could listen to it, and it's posted whenever the webinars get recorded, and we post them to the podcast. But the slides and the voiceover slides are under the tab called webinars. Or if you click on the webinars part, then you'll be taken to where all those are, and then look for the Sendo Reliability series.
And I think I was introduced to you to the Sendo Reliability webinar series years ago when I was, I needed some recertification units. And well, most importantly, the topic was interesting. But you can also get recertification units by attending the webinar too. Yeah. You have a lot of good series on the site.
Yeah, thank you. All right, cool. Well, thanks so much, Dianna. And I think it was you that told me about the 37 tools, but maybe it was LinkedIn that we both saw or something. So anyway, thanks so much for bringing it up. And it's been a topic of interest for me for a while, so hopefully it will generate a few questions, and we'll take it from there.
Sounds great.
Talk to you later.
Always a pleasure, Fred.
Take care. Thanks for listening to Speaking of Reliability. We invite you to join the conversation. If you have a question or a topic that you think we should discuss in a future show, please let us know. You can find a comment box below the episode show notes, or just leave a note as part of a review on iTunes.